Hey guys, and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this video I'm going to show you guys how to solve the famous FIZZ BUZZ problem and how we can do it using Unity and C#. So this is a simple application that I've created. It just prompts the user to enter a number from 1 to 100. I'll just select 50 and I'll press start. And there you see it. I have 1, 2, and in the place of 3 I have fizz, in the place of 4 I have, in the place of 5 I have buzz, in the place of 15 should show FIZZ BUZZ. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to need is a background, so we're going to right click in the hierarchy, go all the way down to UI and click image. I'll just zoom out a bit. Then we'll just rename this to background, and we head over to the inspector, hold down shift and alt, and we'll just stretch that out to fill up the screen. Then I'm going to just change the color quickly. You can pick whatever color you like. I'm just going to go with this color here. The next thing we're going to need is a heading just to say FIZZ BUZZ. I'll go all the way down to UI and select Text Mesh Pro. I'll import the TMP Essentials and I'll just close this off. I'll just rename this to FIZZ BUZZ heading. Then I'll change the text to FIZZ BUZZ. I'll select my multi-tool and just put that all the way up there, and I want to increase the font size as well, so that looks good. I'll go to my rect tool and just stretch that out a bit, and then go to its inspector, hold on shift and alt, and I'll just select top center. I'll bring that in a bit, select my multi-tool and bring that down a little bit, maybe just drop the size a bit. I'll select my rect transform again and center that time, and that looks okay. Then I'm just going to underline this quickly and make it bold. Go back to my rect tool and just stretch that out a bit. Next thing I need is a text to prompt the user, so I'll go all the way down to UI and select Text Mesh Pro. All we're going to say is please enter, or we'll just say enter a number from 1 to 100. I'll select my multi-tool and just place that there, and I'll rename this to enter a number text holder. The next thing we need is a input field so that the user can enter a number. We go right click on canvas, go all the way down to UI, and we can select input field Text Mesh Pro. Then we'll just line that up with the text and go to the center of this and just scale that up. That looks fine. Maybe just slightly up, and we'll change this to input field. Lastly, we need a button to start all of our functionality. We'll right click in canvas, go all the way down to UI and select button Text Mesh Pro. We'll move this all the way up next to FIZZ BUZZ, maybe just make that a bit bigger, and we'll rename the text to say start, and we can rename this button to say FIZZ BUZZ button. Okay, and I think all of our UI is taken care of. Let's start scripting. Let's right click in our assets and create a new C# script, and we'll rename this FIZZ BUZZ manager. So one more thing that we needed to add was a Text Mesh Pro to hold our actual numbers. So we right click on canvas, go down to UI, and we select Text Mesh Pro. We can just bring that over there and stretch that out, and we can just maybe bring down the font size a bit, and let's change the color to, I'm just going to use yellow as my color, and we can just put some dummy text in here. We know that it's going to show 1, 2, and we want this to show fizz. Then we'll say 4, and we want this to show buzz just as a default value, and we'll change this to FIZZ BUZZ values or value text holder. We'll open up our script. So I just have my C# script open. I'm just going to remove the update and start function because we don't need it. We're going to need a public function that we can add onto our button so that we can start the whole FIZZ BUZZ. So we can just say something like public void and start FIZZ BUZZ. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create a variable called max number, and we're also going to create a public Text Mesh Pro input field. But before we do that, we need to add in the library. So I'll say using TM Pro. Then we can say public or TMP underscore input field, and we can call this max number input field. So we're going to do it in the button, right? So we're going to say that max number is equal to max number input field dot text, but we need to cast this to a integer. So what we can say is int32 dot pass, and we'll just wrap this in parentheses and close it off. You can just do a control dot to add using system, and it should add that library on top there, and this squiggly line would go away. Then what we want to do is we want to loop through this number that the user gives us, and then we want to do something there. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to use a for loop, and we're going to say when int I is equal to 0, but we're going to start from 1, Then we're going to go I is less than or equal to the max number and I plus plus. Then what we want to do is for all of the numbers we're going to create a list and store all of these numbers in a list. So we can do that up here, and we can say public list, and this list is going to be a type int, and we'll just call this display list. Then what we want to do is in our for loop, for every number we want to store this number in a list. So if the user gives us 100, this will loop for 100 times, and then 100 numbers will be stored in this list, which is what we want. So we'll say display list dot add, and we want to add in I, which is each number, and we'll save that. So we could do the functionality in this function, but it's best practice just to create its own function to do all of that work for us. So what we'll do is we'll create a function called FIZZ BUZZ, and this function is going to take two parameters, the first one being the list and the second one being FIZZ BUZZ display text holder. So we need to create that. We'll say public text mesh pro. Now this text mesh pro is going to be the actual text holder that's going to hold the values 1 to fizz, the actual output. So I'll say text mesh pro UGUI, and we can call this FIZZ BUZZ. Then I'll just pass this in as well, and it's going to give us a squiggly now because we don't have this function made. So let's create the function and say public, or we can even just say private because we're not calling this function. We'll say private void FIZZ BUZZ, open close, and we'll close that off. And we need to pass in the list and the text mesh pro. So how we're going to do that is we'll say list, which is of type int, and we'll just call this display list. Then we want to pass in a text mesh pro, and we'll just call this, or we can just call it the same thing, FIZZ BUZZ display. Now that we have our parameters, let's start the actual functionality. So we're going to loop through the entire list. So we'll say for each number in the display list, we want to do a check. And what we want to check for, we want to check for if the number is divisible by 3 with no remainder. That's what this line of code does. So the modulus returns us the remainder. Okay, so we'll say if the number is divisible by 3 with no remainder, and if the number is divisible by 5 with no remainder, we want to display text is plus equal to FIZZ BUZZ. So if the number is divisible by 3 and if the number is divisible by 5, then we want to display FIZZ BUZZ, and I'll just add in a comma. So the first number I can see already would be 15. So when it goes to 15, it will replace 15 with FIZZ BUZZ and a comma with a space because we want to just separate our work nicely. Then we can do the next check. We can say else if the number is divisible by 5 with no remainder, I want to print out buzz. So I'll say FIZZ BUZZ display dot text is plus equal to buzz, and I'll add that same comma with a space and close it off. Lastly, I want to do one more check. I'll say if the number is divisible by 3 with no remainder, then I want to display fizz. I'll add that comma one more time. Lastly, I want to say if the number is not divisible by 3 and 5, if the number is not divisible by 5, if the number is not divisible by 3, then I just want to display that number. So all I can say is FIZZ BUZZ display dot text is plus equal to, and I'll just display that number, and I'll just add in that comma one last time. And lastly, what I want to do is I want this function to return a value out. So I want it to return a string, and at the end I'll just say return, I want to return this text here. So all I can say is return FIZZ BUZZ display dot text, and that will return me FIZZ BUZZ, buzz, fizz, or just a number. I'll just take out my white lines, and this function is over. So I can close my function, get back into my main function, which is the start FIZZ BUZZ, and there's a few things I need to do before I move on. So one of the first things I want to do is before I even start writing to this list, I want to make sure that the list is clear. So I can say display list dot clear, and I'll close that off. The next thing I want to do is before I output anything, I want to make sure that the text holder is also empty. So I can say FIZZ BUZZ display dot text is equal to nothing, and I'll save my work, head over back to Unity. I'll right click in my hierarchy and create an empty game object, and I'll rename this to be called FIZZ BUZZ manager. I'll drag my script onto this game object, and I'll just populate these with my objects from my hierarchy. So it needs a max number input field, which is this right here. So let's drag our input field. Then it needs a fizz buzz display, which is this down here. I'll save my work one more time. So before we give it a try, we need to hook the button up, fizz buzz button, and we need to add our function. I'll drag my fizz buzz manager in here. I'll select my fizz buzz manager script, and the function is called start fizz buzz. Then I'll hit my play button, and let's see how this works. I'll enter my number. I want 50 numbers, and I'll press start, and there you see it. 1, 2, 3. In the place of 3 it says fizz, in the place of 5 it says buzz. And to do our checks quickly, we know that 15 is going to be fizz buzz, we know that 30 is going to be fizz buzz, and we know that 45 is going to be fizz buzz because it's divisible by 3 and 5. And there you have it, guys. If you really enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button and also turn on your bell notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next video.